What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I'm going to break down what happened to the market today as we had some data that came out, and why tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have big jobs numbers alongside other pieces of data that could cause some high volatility for the markets for tomorrow. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000 or more, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia. Deposits $10,000 to get $300 worth of the stock, or deposits $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvidia. You're also going to qualify for a 3.6% APY base rate plus a 4.5% APY extra for 3 months, making it a total of an 8.1% APY. The offer ends very soon, so please check out my link down below to sign up or use this QR code right here. There's only 2 weeks left for this offer. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So the market had another indecision day today, meaning that although the QQQ is trying to push with tech, we have not broken any key resistance to remain really bullish. We also have not lost any major support to turn more bearish. We just traded sideways throughout the entire day. We did initially get a sell-off, then we got bought back up and came back down again, and we closed kind of flat on SPY. We closed red on the Russell 2000, but the QQQ was somewhat in the green. So the question is, do we get some kind of rug pull move or do we get some kind of big bounce? I'll give you guys my insights in the next couple of minutes. Just know that for tomorrow, we have some important data coming out. The monthly ADP National Employment Report for November is set to be released at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, and this could have a big effect on the overall market's view of interest rates. So keep that in mind. Tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. We have important data coming out. Once again, the first piece of data we're looking at is the ADP employment change. The Fed is going to be looking at the labor market, and if we see a lot of strength in the labor market, this could change some views about whether or not the Fed is going to be getting a cut. But if the employment data is very, very bad, that could be indicative of more labor market weakness, and it could incentivize the Fed to cut again. So we'll see what happens with the ADP employment change for tomorrow. May cause some volatility. Then we have import and export prices at 8:30 a.m., which is more minor, but then things get very serious as we get close to market open, because at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 15 minutes before the stock market opens, we have the industrial and manufacturing production numbers coming out. This may cause a little bit of volatility, but then I expect more volatility during this time right here at 9:45 and 10 a.m. because we have the S&P Global Composite PMI and the ISM Services PMI, business activity, employment, new orders, and prices data coming out. So I know this is kind of complicated. Here are the two main times for volatility, just to be very blunt. 8:15 a.m. tomorrow, we're looking for some volatility because of the ADP employment change. And then at 9:45 and 10 a.m., expect some more volatility during this range as we have important PMI data alongside the ISM services numbers. Those are the main times for volatility. The most important pieces of data come out during those times: 8:15 a.m. and 9:45 a.m. and 10 a.m. During those 3 times. Other than that, much of the data is not that serious for tomorrow. So we will see what happens with all this data coming out. I think that one of the most important pieces of data will come out at 8:15, and this may cause a very, very big move. Now, looking at the current market views right now, we're seeing some sector rotations right now with some money being put into tech, at least for the shorter term. There was weakness in tech, but now we're seeing a bounce, and market sentiment is a little bit more bullish for an end of the year rally. It is supported by the notion that the Fed is going to be dovish and cut in December, and also because quantitative easing is here. However, the overall view could be affected by the labor market numbers coming out for tomorrow and other factors like that. Looking at the data, the Fed is continuing to repurchase these treasuries, which tells us that they are becoming a little bit more dovish. But of course, this does not guarantee a cut. Although it's very likely the Fed will cut in December, we're still waiting on more pieces of data. Jerome Powell spoke yesterday. He did not mention anything about monetary policy because we're in the Fed's blackout period. But we're going to see what happens with the next jobs report. For earnings, keep in mind we have Dollar Tree and Macy's announcing earnings in the morning tomorrow. And then after market close, we have Salesforce, Snow, and a couple more. There could be some volatility for these tickers, but they're not that impactful for the overall market. Finally, for the fear and greed index right now, extreme fear makes up the majority of sentiment as the market is trying to bounce. And there is some fear when it comes to market momentum right now because of how the market is trading. And then when it comes to the put to call option ratio, it's continuing to fall as puts are being closed, helping the market hold up because of the delta hedging that's going on. And finally, the VIX is neutral. We're going to see if this bounces or not, but overall, it's in a more neutral position. So, what do I think is going to happen to the markets? One thing that's a possibility is this left shoulder, the head, and then see how we could be forming this right shoulder right here. What has to happen for the right shoulders? We have to get some kind of rejection, come back down to form that right shoulder, then bounce. That's going to be like the inverse head and shoulder scenario for SPY. Now, when it comes to the right shoulder, what you'll see is that SPY is not breaking out, and this is a good sign for bears. We have not broken 685 to be bullish yet. If we break this, we could invalidate the rising wedge. We could invalidate the inverse head and shoulders. We could just turn bullish and go for all-time highs if we could break 685, right? But as of right now, we're doing this interesting thing where when SPY was at 685 back in October, we basically consolidated, rejected, consolidated. We were trying to break and we failed and got this big rejection. Then, if you look at what happened back in mid November, we tried to push for 685, rejected, pushed again towards it, rejected, and we saw this big sell off. Now, what's happening is that we're trying to push for 685. We came close, rejected. We tried again today. We came back down. We're trading sideways. Are we about to see what happened 2 times before, where we consolidate near 685 and then reject? Consolidate, then reject? Are we about to consolidate, then reject again, or are we about to break out? It depends on our levels, so always be unbiased, but obviously the downside risk is still there unless we get back above 685, in my opinion. So once again, I always look at our key fib levels. So if you look at the key Fibonacci retracement level, right here, our golden pocket still aligns with that right shoulder. So there's still reason to believe that the inverse head and shoulder scenario could be forming, and we could be looking for a rejection right here. It's still a strong possibility. Another thing worth noting is that on the daily time frame, SPY has a lot of gaps to fill. There's a gap down here, another gap over here. Let's just close out these areas. There's a lot of gaps left on the daily, right? There's these gaps over here that are still unfilled, which makes me suspect the possibility of essentially coming back down, and that does open the doors for possible downside. So, what's my prediction? Here's what I'm going to be looking at. We have important jobs numbers, the PMI and services numbers all coming out, particularly at 8:15 a.m., 9:45, and 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that data could cause some volatility. If we're bullish, to turn me into a bigger bull, I want to see SPY break 685. If it does that, we could be looking for all-time highs or new highs, and we could invalidate this inverse head and shoulders. However, if you're bearish, you want to see us basically reject and lose 678. If that fails us, I think we could be dipping to the 660s. 666 in particular could be tested as well. I am currently in the middle, given the fact that we're just trading sideways. Last 3 days, SPY was not really doing much. We're just going back and forth like this, back and forth, back and forth. But another interpretation is that just like what happened over here and over here, we were just going back and forth and then we rejected, back and forth and rejected because we failed to break past 685. So I predict that, I think that tomorrow, depending on the data, we're going to see some consolidation again. And unless we break 685, I still favor that this might get a rejection. We're going to eventually come down to 675. And then we're going to see if it holds. If not, we could be dipping a lot more back to the 660s. I still lean in favor of that. I would like to see a right shoulder form before our December rally, because if we get a big sell off, it's going to be nothing more than a buying opportunity. I think it's possible. I do lean a bit more in favor of that given the current price action, given the fact that SPY consolidated near 685 and rejected one. It did the same thing again twice, and this could be the third time. The third time this happens where we consolidate near 685 and just reject. So it looks like history may repeat itself, and I do lean a bit more in favor of that rejection, some kind of consolidation and rejection. Of course, I am very unbiased, and I'm just telling you what I lean towards. I just mean that it's always important to watch your levels and to be unbiased and to manage risks no matter what. But I just want to say that because we're failing to break 685 so far, I do favor this downside move as long as that continues. On the QQQ, it's the same setup. I know there's a lot of lines here. I can try to clean this up a little bit. But anyways, we have a very similar left shoulder, head, and then a right shoulder that could be forming, meaning that when I go like this, you could see it's a little bit clearly. There's a left shoulder here, a head, and then the question is, can we break this resistance and turn bullish? If we could hold 625, there's a chance the QQQ goes for the gap fill for essentially 629. There is this gap to fill over here if that's the case. But if it doesn't happen like that, we could be looking for a big rejection. And if we reject off 625 and get back below like 613, we could be looking for that right shoulder near 598 or so. And then we're going to see if we bounce off that or not for an inverse head and shoulders. So I think that we're at a very, very tough resistance here. Just like SPY, there was a time when the QQQ came up to 625 consolidated and then rejected, right? There's another time this happened over here. We consolidated near 625 and then we rejected. And the question is, are we going to see the same thing happen here? Do we consolidate near 625 again and then get some kind of rejection? It's a possibility, so I'll be watching the charts just to be safe. On to the daily time frame. Look at the QQQ. There's a lot of gaps left over here, especially on the daily time frame, which makes me suspect that there is some downside risk. There's also a gap above in case we do break resistance, so always be unbiased, but just know that so far we have not invalidated our rising wedge. In fact, you could even try to redraw it. I haven't really done that yet because it doesn't really matter. And then simultaneously, you have this left shoulder, head, and possible right shoulder that could be forming. I still think that's very possible. So for bullish, you want to see us break 625 to continue to go higher, but if we lose 613, we're going to be bearish. I think we push for 625 tomorrow, and then we're going to see if the jobs numbers cause us to get some kind of rejection. If that's the case, we could still return to the lows, and we're going to be looking to see if we turn right back down. I'll be watching that very, very closely if that ends up being the case or not. So watch this very, very closely. We can also kind of like redraw this rising wedge a little bit, just to be a little bit more clear. But overall, like I said before, as we go higher, we're going to see if we get some kind of rejection. On the IWM, if we are bullish, you want to see us essentially break past 246. If we're bearish, you want to see us essentially lose 244. If that fails us, we could be dumping back down towards 242. And overall, there is some downside risk. But overall, I'm going to be watching this 20 EMA on our IWM. We could see a small bounce here. And if we can't get back above 247, I do think we continue to fall for 242. Is it possible that the Russell's ahead of SPY and the QQQ, and this is kind of like foreshadowing what's about to come? We'll see about that. On ES, we're trading completely sideways. There's no bullish or bearish move yet. If we're bullish, you need to see us break 6,900. This high has to be broken, and then we're looking for a big breakout. If we're bearish, you want to see us essentially lose 67.87. If that fails us, we could be turning right back down. I believe that we continue to consolidate, but the downside risk is still there if the top is in for the inverse head and shoulders. This might come a little bit short of the previous high, and this could be like a left shoulder, a head, and then this could be like our right shoulder that's forming before it tries to bounce. So it depends. Do we get a rejection here or not? I'm still seeing consolidation, but we could be looking for 68.23. If that fails us, we're looking for 67.87 for some temporary downside. On NQ, we basically have a left shoulder head and then a possible right shoulder forming. Now, it could go a little bit higher. It's possible tech goes a bit higher for 25,800. It could go a little bit higher before this potentially rejects to form our right shoulder, and then it bounces for the inverse head and shoulders like this. We're going to see how well we hold up. If we lose 25,380, we're looking for a bigger move down, and we're going to see how it goes. I do anticipate some upside for 25,800 and then some consolidation before we turn back down like this, and we'll see what happens. For Bitcoin, we have a double bottom right here. As long as we don't lose 89,000, we could be looking for an attempt to get back up to 93,000. On Tesla, this is not looking that good because it's already starting to show some signs of rejection. First off, there's a rising wedge. We tried to go for 435 and came down, and then there's this big gap to fill at 393. If we break 435, I'm bullish. If not, I'm looking for essentially 420. If that fails, we could be turning back down towards 415 and eventually the low 400s. I think tomorrow we consolidate again. but I'm going to be looking to see Tesla get back below 420. I have a feeling it's going to be dipping, but we'll see just to be safe as long as 435 fails this. Nvidia has a tendency of kind of pumping, rejecting, pumping, rejecting, pumping, rejecting. We pushed to about 185, and so far we're struggling to break past this. It's possible we consolidate before turning back down towards 175, so keep that in mind. Apple, however, is looking a bit more bullish. We have this resistance to watch for around this 288 area, and we'll see if we turn back down towards 280. But overall, I do anticipate some upside for 287.5 to 288, and then we'll see if we reject. Apple still looks more bullish, and I think we're favoring 287.5 next for some temporary upside. Netflix looks a little bit more bullish. We're going to be testing this tough support becoming resistance near 110. But overall, we're making higher highs and higher lows. We're respecting a bullish channel. And I could be looking for the low 110 area before we see a possible rejection. But overall, it still looks a bit more bullish. MSTR is looking a bit more bullish. It's going to be favoring 188, and we'll see if we reject or not. But it could be going a bit higher for the 50 EMA. Celsius has an inverse head and shoulders, but it might dip a little bit. We're watching to see if 40.5 holds. If not, we could be dipping to like 39.8. Supermicro has a nice accumulation as well. We're going to see if this double bottom forms an accumulation. If we end up losing 32, we're looking for a dump. But if we break 34.78, we're looking for a bounce. Could dip here before it bounces back up. Palantir also has an inverse head and shoulders. It could be dipping back down to 167. We'll see how it goes. But overall, there is some downside risk. Rivian has a nice accumulation right here. However, there is some tough resistance near 18. We're making lower highs, so we could be dipping back down towards 16.6. SoFi also has an inverse head and shoulders. However, it could be dipping back down to 28.34, and we'll see if we bounce. Overall, there is some downside risk, and we could be retesting these EMAs, though, for some temporary downside. AMD is making lower highs. We're going to see if we hold above 221. If we don't, we could be dipping back down towards 210 to 208. So I see some downside risk on AMD. ARM has some tough resistance at 138. Expected test tomorrow. If that breaks, we're looking for 140 plus. Still has potential to go higher, but watch the test of this 50 EMA to see if it breaks. On Palantir, we're dipping. We're going to likely be retesting. Sorry, not Palantir. PayPal. We're going to likely be retesting 62.5 to 62.3 for some temporary downside. Coinbase is consolidating between 268 and 262. I expect that to continue before a possible rejection. This is rejecting so far on the 4-hour, and there is a risk of it kind of like popping and dropping. And this could be dipping to fill this gap and return to the low 260s or below. So I see some downside risk on there. Amazon's going to be likely retesting 232 to 231.5 for some temporary downside. Meta has a slight bearish divergence. If we break 650, I'm bullish. But if we can't get back above that, I'm going to be favoring a move back down to 636. So I think the odds favor a rejection on Meta. Google is looking a bit more decent because it has a bullish falling wedge right here. And if we continue to hold 315, we're looking for a bounce back up to 320. So this has some potential to bounce. And then Microsoft also has an inverse head and shoulders. This could try to go higher, but we're trading sideways right now. As we touch 492, we reject. As we touch 485, we like to bounce. It may consolidate and retest 485, and we'll see if we bounce or not. Oracle has a double top here. We're going to see if we break past 202. If not, we could be dipping back down to like 198. And then finally, for those who are interested in Broadcom, we may continue to dip back down to 373.8 because we're failing at 385. It looks a little bit more bearish to me. The VIX, it's consolidating, but notice it's trying to form a base around the 15 area, which is where the VIX has bounced many times for the past couple of months. So we're going to see if we form a base here and bounce back up towards like the 18 area. So give it the time it needs. The 10-year, is this about to dip higher, dip lower, or is it about to get some kind of bounce? It depends on the jobs numbers coming out for tomorrow. It could be affected by that. Same thing with the dollar. Is this about to bounce off an inverse head and shoulders, or does this dip lower as the market pushes higher? And crude is still dipping, which is not really affecting overall, the overall market. So right now, if SPY could break 685, I could switch to bullish, but as of right now, there's no confirmation of a break. And it does not look like that's going to happen because we're just consolidating right here. And the last times we came in these areas and consolidated, we got 2 big rejections on SPY. So we're watching to see if this inverse head and shoulders pans out, if this rising wedge still gives us that big rejection, which is still very possible. Sometimes the moves are delayed. So I lean in favor of downside. I think we consolidate and see a dump on SPY back down to 675 or below. I think the QQQ is going to basically test 625 and then maybe reject back down towards the lows at 613 or below. I do favor those scenarios. But of course, we have to wait for confirmation, see if we can break resistance or not, and be very unbiased heading into the data coming out for tomorrow. We have big data coming out relative to the last couple of days. We have the ADP employment change at 8:15. At 9:45, we have the S&P Global Composite PMI, and then we have the very important ISM services data at 10 a.m., which could cause volatility. So look for volatility at 8:15 a.m., 9:45 a.m., and 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be ready, guys, and we'll see what happens with this data. As of right now, I do still favor a rejection move on SPY in the QQQ and the rug pull. But of course, we're going to wait for confirmation and see how we end up reacting to resistance. So, with that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. In my opinion, the market is risky at these levels given what happened before, as the market has rejected near these levels many times before. So, we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. So, watch your data and see what kind of move we make. Once again, I like to be very unbiased with my analysis. Thank you for listening, guys. Please have an awesome rest of your guys' days, nights, or evenings. And I'll be back very soon with another update heading into tomorrow before market open. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best and peace out.